you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
I am well. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Let me introduce you to our audience. You are a Canadian motocross rider, and you've been riding for 10 years, or since you were 10 years old, and you've won the Super Mini Championships in 2016 and placed first in your class in the 85cc. And in 2019, you achieved 2 schoolboy class first place finishes and 1 two-stroke first place finish. And I also want to mention Matthew's experience store that's available on the SPRTER app, where he is offering experiences to his followers, such as gaming with him, a personal Q&A, or motocross one-on-one sessions. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be on, excited.
You are a longtime SPRTER supporter, and you've been with us for a while now, so I'm excited to have you and get to talk to you for a little bit today and delve deeper in your background. So walk me back to, how did you start riding motorcycles? How did you start with motocross, and where did it all start? Why motocross?
Yeah, that's a great question. It all started with my neighbor, actually. He had a PW50, which is a small starter bike, and he had it for sale. And then my dad had a 450 that he always putted around on, but never really involved us with it. So then he came to my dad and asked him, hey, you want to buy this? My dad's like, yeah, why not? So he bought it, brought us out to the track, me, my brother and sister, and let us putt around on it. And from that point on, it was just couldn't stop. So, and then he saw that we had potential and started bringing us to the States and getting us into more serious, more training, hardcore.
That's interesting that it started with a neighbor and how it went from there. Now, what's that feeling? What made you decide, you know what, this is what I want to do versus all of the other sports? I know in Ontario, hockey, right? Hockey's big, right? That's what all of the talent goes towards, or most of the talent goes towards normally. So you being an athlete, deciding to use and be in motocross, what made that decision?
Honestly, I'm not too sure. It was pretty much all I've known because I started it at a decently young age. So I never really got the chance to try hockey. Like, for instance, I don't even know how to skate. And that's just because, I've never tried it. So I'm sure it would be a fun thing to do. But since I grew up on dirt bikes, that's all I know. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
And it's honestly, the content you put out there and the pictures you share, whether it's on your Instagram, your Snap, or on the SPRTER app, it's pretty amazing in terms of all of the air you're getting, and it just looks awesome. I kind of I want to get involved. I know I would hurt myself, so I know that's something that I would need, but it's just pretty awesome content that you're sharing. Now, what do you consider your biggest accomplishment in motocross?
I would say my biggest accomplishment would be making it to Loretta Lynn's, which is pretty much the biggest amateur national in, I want to say, the States, but most people say the world. And it was a very hard journey because I tried for a couple years and couldn't make it. And because they only take a certain amount from each class, right? No one can just go and race. And it was always my dream to make it. And then I eventually made it on 125s. And I couldn't perform to my full potential because of a medical condition. But it was still, just getting there was probably the best thing I've ever done. It made it, all the hard work, all the wanting to cry, give up, all that stuff, it made it worth it, because that's why I do it,
And that's really interesting to hear in terms of that journey and some of the struggle that you and not just you, but that athletes go through that usually don't get shared online. Now, when you're talking about athletes make a lot of sacrifices, but then also go through a lot of the struggles. When you talk about those, was there ever a time when you thought about, this is not worth it, let's just move on, live life, and not worry about competing? And what kept you going? What kept you pushing?
Yeah, actually, a couple of times that happened. sometimes when a race doesn't go the way I plan on it, it's not, oh, I want to quit because for any other reason. It's more just me being hard on myself, because it's like, I know that I can do better. I know that I've trained all those hours and I'm performing like that, and it just gets me frustrated. And then I just started kind of getting in my own head, and then that's when it kind of loops back to, why am I doing this? I should probably just call it quits and live a normal life. But then after you cool down, you have 15 minutes to just kind of think to yourself, then you realize, like, okay, now you know what you need to work on. And then that's kind of what kept me going, because if I were to just say, yeah, hang up the boots, call it a day, then I wouldn't be anywhere. I'd be probably at home playing Xbox.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's esport athletes that are performing at a really high level, but I can totally see the difference there in terms of, well, you're out there training, and I really appreciate you pushing through that and continuing with it. And I also appreciate the vulnerability that you sharing this story, because a lot of athletes are going through that, and not everyone's willing to share. But I think it's really good that we're having conversation around those struggles as well, and that athletes are honest when they share these feelings that they have, because they're so normal. And we've seen it at the Olympic stages where people are like, well, I don't feel mentally at my peak right now, so they're pulling out of competitions, etc. So I really appreciate you sharing that. That's really a lot of younger athletes will need to hear that a lot of athletes are going through that. Walk me through some of the training routine. You mentioned a lot of the hard training, and obviously I can see some of the content you're putting out there in terms of the motocross training. But what's a regular training look like? You go to the gym for a foundation, and then you do some motocross training, or how's that look, and what's that on a daily or weekly routine looking like for you?
Yeah, so it's pretty much wake up and go. There's no, relaxing, except for normally we get Sundays off. But so you pretty much wake up, then you warm up on a spin bike indoors or elliptical, or just something to get your heart rate going, and then stretch out, get all warmed up, go out, do motos or sections, whatever it is that you're training on the bike, and then come back. You have about an hour to two to do your bike work, wash it, all that. And from that point, then you go straight to gym, and we alternate between cardio and weights. So on the weight side, it's not about bulking up and getting, huge muscles. It's more just about strength and working on those specific muscles that help you on the bike, rather than just being a big,
Yeah.
But and then the cardio side is, normally it's road biking. That's probably the best one for motocross, because it helps lactic acid, and that's a huge part in it, because that's what causes arm pump, right, in riding. So the cardio is a huge card in motocross. And so basically after gym, then you come home, do your schoolwork, whatever you need to do, cook dinner, and then bed, and then repeat the next day.
That sounds pretty grueling, as in terms of like the athletic, like 2 times a day you do strength, cardio, and the bike work. Now it makes a lot of sense that as you're on a bike, you may as well train on a bike, in terms of, even though it's a different type of bike, but the type of endurance training makes a lot of sense. Now you talked about the type of muscle and the strength, so you're not trying to bulk up, you're not trying to become huge, but you're talking about the different muscle groups that are important to perform on the bike. What's the most important? I mean, if you can narrow it down to one or if you say, hey, here are the main things that I need to consider, main muscle groups. Is it core strength? Is it arms, legs? What are we talking here?
It's on a motorcycle, it's pretty much every muscle. I know I said work specific muscles, but in reality, it's pretty much every muscle. It's legs, arms, core, just all that, because your core helps you, keep the bike sturdy. Your arms help you keep the bike sturdy. Your legs, it all plays into one big thing. But it definitely helps to do core, because it helps you with the balance. So core is a huge, because balance on the bike, which is, huge, that you need. and then upper body strength to keep the bike from, you know, getting all wishy-washy, and then legs to keep because a lot of people think you steer with the bars, which you do, but it's basically with your knees, with your legs. Your legs do a lot of the work for you. So if you're gripping that bike, it helps keep it down a lot more than if you just had your legs loose. Then your arms are going to be fighting the whole time. So your whole body is a big player in it, but you just have to work. I'm not, you know, I don't know what every muscle is called, but I just know you need to work specific muscles that our trainers give us.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I didn't want to get into anatomy here, but
Yeah.
it helps us understand and helps the audience understand that, hey, you're on a motorbike. It's not just, you know, revving it up and there you go. It's not, it's arms, it's legs, it's core, it's coordination, it's the stabilizing muscles, it's pretty much everything. So that's really exciting to hear as well, and get some more insights on a sport that most people are not that familiar with. And I actually grew up in Germany, and I lived next to a motocross club, so I've witnessed a lot of the motocross riding, and I always looked at it, I'm like, oh, this is really cool, I want to get involved with that. But then all of just the balance that you have on the bike, so exciting, and it's just so much coordination. That's pretty impressive. Now, when you started out, and maybe even still today, what are some of the role models in the sport that you look up to, where you think, you know what, if I can ride like that guy or like that woman, I'd be pretty happy?
Yeah, I have two actually, and there's one from Canada and one's from the States.
Okay.
And well, not from the States, but, you know, trained in the States and based in there. So the one from Canada is Marco Canella. He's not a huge guy that's all over the news, you know, all over TV. He's like, I've known him for a while now. Like, I'm pretty tight with him, but he's a pro rider, and I've always kind of looked up to him because just his style and everything. It's always just something that I strived for, you know, to achieve, because he's always so smooth. Like, he doesn't look like he looks effortless when he's riding, and his attitude with the sport is just phenomenal. Like, he's all around a great athlete, and that's why I've always looked up to him. So it's pretty cool that it's like I can say he's one of my close friends, you know, and I look up to him like that. And then the other guy is the greatest of all time, Ricky Carmichael, which is, you know, famous, huge guy in the States. And he's just the GOAT all the way around, because if you watch videos on him, you'll see his style. Like, he's just relentless. You know, there's just something about his style, the way he rides, the line choices, just everything he does on a bike is just so insane to watch. It just blows your mind when you're watching him.
I can understand that, and from that type of style, we hear that a lot from athletes, no matter what type of sport they're talking about. Some of their role models, like, it's the style, and for each sport it's a different type of style. But some athletes, I'm like, yes, this is why I follow you. This is, or fans even, it's like, this is, the style is fluid. It just has that effortlessness to it, which never is effortless. It's always the outcome of 10,000s of hours of work, but it just looks like it's effortless. So I can absolutely see that. Now, one of your comments that you just made actually translates into one of our next segments really well. In our Pro Advice segment, we have submissions from our audience that asked us to ask you this question. And so I want to read out to them. I want to read them out to you. We got two questions. The first one is, when I ride, I'm sometimes scared of trying new tricks. What makes you overcome that fear, and what type of tips do you have to help someone who's struggling with that?
That's a good one, because I used to be very cautious on a bike. I would never do anything that was out of my comfort zone, because I was always scared to get hurt or just anything to happen, right? Because they're so finicky doing stuff like that. And I think the best advice that somebody told me was just, if you're comfortable, do it. If you're not, do it. because that sounds very, dumbed down, but it's black and white. You got to do it at the end of the day if you want to progress, right? So if you get hurt, you get hurt. You only have one life. You're going to live it to the fullest. If you want to go anywhere in the sport, you got to do what you got to do. So that's why you just have to, kind of turn off your brain and go and try new things and get comfortable with it.
Do you try them in like more of a safety? Do you have additional paddings when you try new tricks, or do you jump in almost like a pit, or do you just go on the actual course?
Well, unfortunately with motocross, there's no pits and stuff because it's just straight track. And if you're not hitting, the 150-foot jump, you're not hitting it, right? Like there's no, you can try to hit it, but there's no pit, there's no, it's either you do it or don't. And a lot of the time you just have to just do it. And it's hard, I guess it comes with experience, but you kind of, after a while of doing it, you kind of get the general idea of how fast you have to go to hit it just by looking at it. Because, if somebody just looks at a huge jump, they're thinking wide open, like as fast as you can go. And a lot of times, like, you'll overshoot it, and then that's your broken legs, broken ankles, broken wrists. Like, it's, never good. But I guess with experience, you kind of like, you can gauge how fast to hit it. And then a lot of jumps like tabletops, you can slowly jump further and further and further. But with doubles, you kind of only have one shot, and you just have to hope you do it perfect. Otherwise, it's not going to be good.
And just to understand that better, doubles means when there's basically a gap in the middle and then you have a landing?
Yeah, so there's a takeoff, and then it's almost like they hollowed out, the dirt, and then a landing.
Yeah, I can see why there's only one shot here. Now, Is that where math comes into play, where you're like, you know what, I'm actually paying more attention in math now in terms of velocity and speed and angles and so on?
In a sense. I mean, I know everybody thinks differently, but personally, when I look at a jump, I don't start, calculating stuff in my head. I just kind of think, okay, if we overshoot it, we overshoot it. I was like, I hit this jump like this. They're sort of similar. This one was half throttle, so maybe this one's going to be a quarter throttle. And that's what I do. I don't overanalyze it too hard, and which I probably should think about it a little more because I've overshot quite a few in the last month, actually. So I should probably start being a little safer. But at the end of the day, I just kind of go off of the jumps I hit before, and I just, bounce off each other.
Okay, so it's more a little bit of a trial and error and
yeah,
hitting it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now our second submission reads, I haven't been the best about eating healthy lately. It's part of our club culture. And I enjoy eating fast food. Do you have any advice for me on how to get around that and improve that nutrition?
I'm not gonna lie, everybody loves fast food, right? Everybody likes food. It's kind of, if you say you don't, you're lying. Everybody likes it. You kind of just have to get over the craving because it's not a constant thing. You get in these moods where you're like, okay, I want to go get McDonald's. I want a Whopper, or that's Burger King, but I want a Whopper. And then 10 minutes later, if you just stop thinking of it, you don't want it anymore. Then you're like, oh, I want a bowl of cereal. Like, it just kind of changes. So normally whenever I get like cravings that I want to go down to the corner store and get like a sweet tea or a Gatorade or something, then I'll just chug a water, and then it just takes the taste out of my mouth. It just changes my thoughts, and then I'm like, oh, I don't even want it anymore. So it definitely helps doing that.
So water is the cure all here.
Yeah, start chugging water and you're good.
I like that advice because we see that with a lot of that behavioral research where people say you need to replace one habit or one craving with something else. So people get off smoking cigarettes by chewing gum or by drinking. So I think water is really good advice here. That's awesome.
It kind of keeps your mind occupied too while you're drinking it, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's pretty cool. Now, thinking about the progression of motocross in Canada, has it changed over the last years, and where do you see it going?
It definitely has. This year, 2021, it was actually a huge year, I think, for the Canadian motocross industry. There was a lot, like the race entries were through the charts that I've never seen such high numbers at local races, which was really cool to see. And because normally, you know, you come to the States and it's just every race is pretty much loaded, packed. And then you go to Canada and you have, kind of half gates, not nearly as full, as vibrant, I guess you would say. And this last year, 2021, was actually probably the best year I've seen personally, where it was just people everywhere, like everybody doing their thing. It was probably the amount of people was probably multiplied by like 3 that I've normally seen, which was huge. And I think that next year, 2022, is going to be even bigger than that. And then it's just going to keep going up and up through the years.
Do you think that has anything to do with COVID, and because it's a sport where you can actually be socially distanced? And how has that impacted your training routine, or has it impacted it at all?
Yeah,
how do you need to adjust? Sorry.
No, you're good. Keep going.
So how do you need to adjust because of COVID there?
So COVID doesn't really affect too much down in the States, but I definitely do think COVID has a huge role in the Canadian industry for motocross, because in the States, they're way less serious about COVID. Like you go to the Walmarts here and you probably see one mask, and everybody's, anti-vaxxers, which everybody has their own opinion. I'm neutral on that, but you can just tell the difference. In Canada, it's like mandatory. You need masks everywhere. Everybody's socially distancing. Here, there's people, hitting your elbows, no masks on. So they don't really care here. That's why Canada, at the track, they definitely do follow the rules with masks, social distancing. But since it's outdoors, it's a lot less indoor, wearing masks, everybody kind of to themselves, because you can take your mask off in your own pit, talk to people around you, and it's a lot nicer. And when you're on the track, you're obviously not wearing a mask, right? And but I think a lot, and people just get bored sitting at home, so they probably went online, how much is a dirt bike, and then kind of got into it like that. So I think that's a huge role in it.
Okay, that's awesome, and I can see that, and we've seen something similar in golf, where you can be outdoors, and similar with motocross. Makes a lot of sense. Now we have a segment that we call Break the Rules. In Break the Rules, we'll ask you, well, basically, if you could change one rule in motocross competitions, make it more exciting, better for the rider, better for the fans, do something completely crazy, that would make the sport better, whatever that definition of better is, what would it be?
If it would be anything, I think it would have to be the contact part. I think that they would need to lighten up a little bit on what they consider, I guess, black flags, which is like a red card in soccer. And it's like if you smack someone, like come into a corner and just put them off the track, depending on how it looks, you can be fined for it. And a lot of times you'll get black flagged and you'll get frowned upon, right? But I personally think if you're getting smacked off the track, that just means you gave the person an opportunity to smack you off the track. So I think it's okay to smack people off the track. I'm obviously, not just come in and just get both of you down, but like a nice off the track. And I think contact would be a pretty good one, because I personally don't mind it. I mean, if you're getting hit, it's your fault. If you're hitting someone, it's their fault, really.
Okay. Now I can see that. Obviously, that almost pushes us back to like some of the gladiator fights way back in ancient Rome, which obviously are very entertaining. I think from that body contact perspective, obviously we see that in other sports as well, right? Hockey, you have the checks and so on. So I would assume that the stakes are a little bit higher if you go 50 miles an hour and do some crazy jumps.
Yeah.
But it would definitely make it pretty interesting. Now I can see that. We know you're quite passionate about cancer research, and that is quite personal to you. So if you could tell us a little bit about that and what it means to you and why that is the case, because we see lots of athletes are getting involved, they're supporting specific causes, and we always want to get to the core of that why.
Yeah, for sure. I think the main reason why I'm so with that cause against cancer is because my brother had cancer twice, and it's not nice, just knowing your family member has cancer, because you don't know what the outcome's going to be. You don't know if they're going to survive. You don't know, like, as brutal as it sounds, you really don't know, and the fact that he got it twice was just like wow. So I know what our family went through. I saw my mom, my dad, how they were when it was all happening. And I just don't wish that upon anyone else. That's why that's probably the biggest cause for me. Just because I've personally not been through it, because I, knock on wood, haven't had cancer, but I've been through the process of what families have been through. And it just sucks.
Yeah, and I'm very sorry to hear that. Is your brother fine now?
Yeah, he's fine. He's fine now.
That's very good to hear. But I want to say I can only imagine, but I probably can't even imagine the stress that it places on not just the person, but then also the family. So it's really, really good to see athletes getting involved with causes that have a personal meaning as well, and supporting those causes. So kudos to you, because obviously that's something that we would expect from an athlete who's maybe millionaire. They're 35, they've been through their whole career, and they're like, yeah, what are I doing next? Oh, let's support a cause. But at your age, at your stage of your career, we don't see as many athletes getting involved and supporting. So that shows a lot about your personality and character as well, which is obviously awesome, something we value really highly at SPRTER as well. So kudos to you.
Yeah, and I think another big one that I haven't put down on the app or anything, but I think it's also animal cruelty and abuse. Like, it's just, I don't know how someone can do that to an animal. It's very hard. Like, last night we found a kitten out by our cabin, and it was about that big, and the thing, like, falling over, and like, I don't know how people can just leave their animals, because that's not the first kitten or dog that we've seen down here that's stray or abandoned. And so anyway, that cat's chilling in our cabin right now, eating the premium kitten food. And but yeah, that's another big one for me, animal cruelty, because that one's just harsh to see, right? No one likes to see that.
Yeah, I think that is, I'm totally with you there in terms of it's incredible, in terms of negatively incredible, how people can behave, particularly towards animals, as those are the ones that can't really, that they don't have the power to be independent, or just, they be living on their own oftentimes, particularly if they're young animals. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's heartbreaking sometimes what humans can do to animals. So good on you to support that as well. I'm a big animal supporter as well. I think animal welfare is really dear. It's probably my number one cause that I care about as well. So I think it shows a lot about someone when they care about others and when they care about animals, because they don't often can't take care of themselves. So
Exactly.
now I know we're hitting the 30-minute mark, and I want to be cognizant of your time, but I really appreciate you joining us and sharing more about your background, your thoughts on the motocross scene, and giving us some insights on you as a person, the person behind the helmet as well, and the person behind the profile. So that's really interesting and really nice to connect as well. As we're wrapping this up, I also want to make sure to mention your SPRTER experience store again as well. That's on the SPRTER app, so where you can and all of your followers can request experiences to be from you, and whether it's a Q&A, gaming, or getting some insights on motocross, in order to not hit that, or in order to hit that table, or the actual landing, rather than the gap in the middle. So head over to the SPRTER app and follow Matthew over there. Make sure to check him out and follow him on Instagram and the other socials as well. I know you have them linked on your Instagram account as well, so we'll make sure to tag you here, and you have them connected on the SPRTER app. So make sure to follow Matthew there and tag along for the ride. No pun intended. Thanks for joining us, and have an awesome day.
Thank you for having me. You as well.